Hi everyone, my name is Stephen Smith with Significant Wealth Partners, and today we're going to talk about the retirement paycheck. When we go through events, COVID, and now we're dealing with events overseas with Russia and Ukraine, and markets go crazy, the most important part of your retirement is making sure you have a secure paycheck. Markets are going to do what they're going to do. We can't predict that. So what we have to do as advisors is focus on the things that we can control. And when you go from working and having a paycheck, you need a plan to go to not working. And where's that paycheck going to come from? Because your expenses for most of you are not going to change when you go from work to retirement, right? A little different, right? Your kids are older, through school, maybe you don't have a mortgage, okay, but you still have expenses. And that retirement paycheck needs to be there. There are typically, it's called a three-legged stool that accounts for your retirement paycheck. And those legs, number one, Social Security. Okay. Number two, pension, if you're lucky enough to have it. And number three, savings. So savings could very easily be 401k, 403b, 457, IRA, cash, brokerage, right? Savings. So for most of you, we got to figure out when to take Social Security. If you're lucky enough to have a pension, what is the right strategy? What I mean by that is, are you married? Do you take the life only, the 50% survivor, the 100% survivor? Do you take the lump sum if it's an option, right? There are choices there with a pension. And then obviously, for those of you that don't have a pension, or maybe your pension isn't very large, we got to fill in the gap between what these two provide, Social Security and pension, to what you need, and that's where savings comes into play. For many of us, your savings is invested in your 401k and IRAs. You've been saving, tax deferred your whole life. And now we're at a point where you're going to call upon that money in retirement. Well, you can't ride the wave anymore of the stock market. You can't, because that's unreliable. What people don't realize, and we're going to go through a lot of numbers today, what people don't realize is that between the year, on January 1st of 2000 through December 31st of 2009, the S&P 500 with dividends reinvested averaged negative 0.72% per year. That's what it did. If you retired on January 1st of 2000, expecting that you were just going to take out, the going rate today is 4%, that you were going to withdraw 4% of your money and it's going to last you a lifetime because the market always comes back. Well, you didn't account for the fact that this is a 10-year period. The market made you no money and you're taking out 4% a year accounting for inflation, right? So let's keep it simple. You've got $1 million. 4% of $1 million means you need $40,000. If your million turns into 500 grand because the markets go bad, guess what? I'm well aware 4% of 500 grand is 20 grand. That's not how it works. Just because the market drops doesn't mean your paycheck changes. If that's the amount of money you need to live on, then whether you have $1 million or 500 grand, you still need it. You got the same expenses whether the market is up or down. That's where this becomes a problem. You're not contributing anymore. You're retired. So what do you typically have to do to generate this money? Now, many of you own very similar portfolios, right? You have the same stuff with a different name. You got a large cap, a mid cap, a small cap, international, bonds, emerging markets, right? Maybe some of you own some gold, right? Well, for the longest time, right, if you wanted to be more conservative in retirement, you moved money from stocks to bonds. I covered that in my last video. Bonds may not be more conservative, especially as inflation and interest rates go up. Okay, but that was covered in my last video. What you guys need is a consistent, reliable paycheck. And if you are forced to take out 4% a year, what you're doing in those mutual funds and ETFs that 80 to 90% of you own, right, you're selling. You're selling shares of what you own. Let me give you an example. Right? A very common strategy for people in retirement, well, even pre-retirement, is to just buy the S&P 500. You just buy it. The ticker symbol is VOO. That's the ETF Vanguard S&P 500. That's what it is. Now today, well, it's $397 a share. I'm just going to use $400 a share. Okay, if you buy. Let's just keep it simple. You put $100,000, right, into VOO. Give me a second. I'm going to give you the exact numbers. So 100 grand. You buy 250 shares. So 100 grand into VOO, which currently is $400 a share. You buy 250 shares, right? Now, you need money. What do you have to do to generate that money? To generate that 4%, you have to sell. You got to sell shares. And when the markets are going through bad periods of time, you're not going to come back because you don't own as many shares. The dividend income in the S&P is only around 1.3%. For most of you, that is nowhere near enough, right? So if you got $1 million invested in the S&P, you would generate about $13,000 a year in dividends. For most people, Social Security plus pension if you're lucky, plus 13 grand a year in dividends, that doesn't get you there, which means you got to sell the shares that you own in order to get you there. You have to take that into consideration. Because had you done that between the year 2000 and 2009, you didn't run out of money yet. By the end of 2018, you did run out of money. Because you caught the 3 bad years to start, 2000, 2001, 2002, the S&P was negative, came all the way back through 07, crashed again in 08, and took a while to recover. But the whole time, if you're retired, you need to keep taking money out. You want to travel, you want to live, you want to, spoil the grandkids for Christmas or whatever the case may be, you still need the money. You still have property taxes, utilities, and everything else, right? So when you sell shares, you have to remember you don't recover. So what you need is the retirement paycheck. You need the retirement paycheck to work whether the market is up or down. And when the market's up, we don't have a problem. It's when we start going through events that none of us predicted, like COVID, and we were all quarantined. Although we were lucky, the market bounced back very quickly. Now we're dealing with war, right? What's next? I don't know. But what I do know is that you need a consistent, reliable paycheck. So let's talk about how to get it. Okay? So we're going to talk about dividends. Dividends, dividends, dividends. How do dividends work? Well, I'm going to give you an exact example. Well, exact as I can get. So I'm going to use AT&T as an example. Okay, their ticker is T. So go to Google and type in T space stock, and it'll pop up. So right now, AT&T is about $23.87 a share. Let's just keep it simple. It's $24 a share. Okay, so in my example here, I'm going to do math again. If you put $100,000 into AT&T at $24 a share, you would buy 4,166 shares of AT&T. You just take the 100 grand, divide it by the 24 bucks a share, and that's how many shares you get. Now, we knew we used 24 bucks a share, right? Now, what it will tell you, if you Google it, it will tell you AT&T pays a dividend of $2.08 a share for every share that you own. So simple math, 4,166, 4,166 times 208. Guess what? $8,665, which is 8.66% yield. Okay, that's your income. You put 100 grand into AT&T, that's your income. Now, if AT&T goes from 24 bucks a share to 12 bucks a share, which means the 100 grand you put in, 100, there, it is there, turns into 50 grand, which a lot of people think is your income gets cut in half. That's not true. Your income isn't based on the share price. Your income is based on how much they're paying you per share. So even though your 100 grand turned into 50 grand, you still own 4,166 shares. So as long as AT&T is still paying you $2.08 a share, you're still generating 8,000. That's not good. Too fast. You're still generating $8,665 in income. Now the question always comes, Stephen, they can cut the dividend. Of course they can cut the dividend. Matter of fact, AT&T is going to cut their dividend for the first time in 36 years. So don't go put all your money in AT&T, guys. Bad idea. And that's my whole point. You can't just put together a basket of dividend-paying stocks and say, hey, we're good. Because dividends do move. They do get cut. It needs maintenance. It needs updating. It needs a lot. And these are some of the things that help build a retirement plan. You can't just put your money there and leave it sit and say, hey, we're good. Okay? Because in the event AT&T cuts their dividend, right, and you have all your eggs in one basket, well, now you got a problem. So you have to spread that risk out. And I don't mean 10, 20, 100. I mean thousands of positions. And there are many ways to generate income off of positions. So I just gave you a great example of how dividends work, okay? So let's talk about this, right? Stocks can pay dividends. Absolutely. Bonds pay interest. Now, I know in my last video I talked about how bonds can be potentially just as risky if interest rates go up, but for the last 40 years they've worked, and on top of it, they pay interest, right? Like a dividend. It's consistent. It's reliable, okay? Preferred stocks, right, also pay. Closed-end funds. Okay, there are many ways to generate income. You have to look at everything, because the first thing that I typically solve for when people come in and see me is cash flow. Most of what we've built here was built off of my Social Security workshop, which many of you have attended. And we find the right Social Security strategy, and then we got to fill in the gap. Well, the way we fill in the gap is using strategies like this, right? And it takes thousands of positions to diversify, because when dividends do get cut, we don't want you to feel that, okay? But that's also part of our job, to make sure that your portfolio stays updated, because when they do get cut, we got to replace those positions. So there is work, and that's kind of why you have a financial advisor to do that work. You know, when we go through 2008, or, you know, in March and April of 2020, when we were all quarantined and the markets tanked, everybody just assumes dividends got cut. They didn't. That's not how that works. Typically, when we go through the big panics, that doesn't really scare me, right? It really doesn't, because that's just people selling when they know they shouldn't be selling. It's the one-offs that scare me. I have people that come in and see me, they have all their money in Abbott and AbbVie. Look, I know Abbott and AbbVie have been great stocks. Well, guess what? GE was a great stock until it wasn't. Abbott and AbbVie are good. They are strong. But once you get into retirement, do you really think it's a good idea to have all of your money there? Right? I have a lot of people that do. I mean, I had a guy came in, he has all his money in Tesla, Amazon, Facebook. Now, and Netflix. I can't really give the guy advice because it's worked so well. But you have to remember, it works until it doesn't. And when it doesn't is when you start to have a problem. There is a sacrifice when you go into an income dividend type of portfolio. The sacrifice is growth. You don't generally grow as much as the overall market, right? You do get some growth. There is growth, but it's not what the market does. And on the flip side, when the markets don't do well, you do generate a consistent paycheck, which is very, very important. See, as an engineer, I don't think about, right, trying to make you all this money in a market that's unpredictable. I think as an engineer, where does your plan fail and how can I make sure that doesn't happen? Yes, there's a sacrifice to that. It means we're not going to grow as much, but you know what? You're going to have a consistent, reliable paycheck so that we solve the biggest fear that everybody has in retirement, which is running out of money. Had you had dividends that accounted for your income need between the year 2000 and 2009, you got through that without a problem and the markets came back. Markets will come back as long as you don't have to sell. If you have to sell, we have a problem. This is how we start to solve that problem. There are other ways. I know a lot of people go to dinner seminars on annuities. I will talk about annuities in another video. Let's leave that one alone. If you have questions on the retirement paycheck, please give us a call. I'm actually going to put all the contact information here. First off, you can email me questions, Stephen, STEPHEN, at swp360.com. Hopefully that all got on the board. I think it did. Okay, you guys should be able to see that. Now, phone number. If you have questions, just call Tammy. She will help get this set up. 847-639-7830. Her extension is 1005. Okay, so call Tammy. She can get you on my calendar. We can have a chat. Guys, that's all I got. If you like my videos, please let me know. Also, the questions you asked help me with future topics. And I have a lot of future topics coming. So we have to talk about how to make your income tax efficient. We need to talk more about inflation. I do have an inflation video on bonds, but we got to go further. Healthcare, Medicare, long-term care, estate planning. There's a lot we can talk about. So again, ask questions. It helps me. I hope these educational videos help you. Thanks. Have a wonderful day. Bye.